Good evening and welcome to DTV, Knoxville's television program for Democrats and by Democrats. We're here at Veterans Day in Knoxville, an annual event that celebrates people who have served in the U.S. military over the years. I'm here with Don Loy, who served as an ordnance officer on the USS Saratoga. Don, welcome. Thank you very much. Tell us a little bit about what you did as a veteran and serving on an aircraft carrier in the Pacific and in the Atlantic.
Well, I was an Air Wing Ordnance Officer for Air Wing 19 in the Pacific and Ordnance Officer for USS Saratoga in the Mediterranean. So I got pretty well all over the world in my 11 years of service.
Well, you certainly did, and I remember the USS Saratoga. I was on the USS English, a destroyer, an old World War II era tin can, and we were berthed next to the Saratoga, and we would come to the Saratoga and eat lunch and breakfast there. Yeah, you had a lot better food than we did.
It was pretty good on Saratoga.
It was. Y'all got treated well. We got the leftovers, I think, but we made it all right.
Yeah, good.
So, Don, what does Veterans Day mean to you?
It brings back memories of comrades and all kinds of service. We were on Yankee Station in Vietnam,
Right.
and I know names on that wall in Washington, and Veterans Day brings those folks back to mind.
Same here. We lost a lot of friends, a lot of good folks. I was up there just recently and looking at that. It was a sad thing, a very sad thing, and but we thank everyone who has served. We honor the people who served. We honor the people who have sacrificed, and we honor our wonderful country. You know, we used to say the partisanship ends at the water's edge. There's no Democrat or Republican in a foxhole or on a ship. You're there with your buddies, and you're there to protect American lives and to protect the lives of you, yourself, and your comrades. And so thank you very much for your service, and we'll look forward to having many more Veterans Days to celebrate.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Back the other way.
Okay, now we're here with Marty McLean, Lieutenant Marty McLean from the U.S. Navy. Marty, tell us a little bit about your service. You served on several ships. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I went to college on the Navy ROTC scholarship. Was commissioned upon graduation. Reported to my first ship, the USS Hopewell, and I joined them in Japan. And I spent 2 years on that ship. Among the interesting things, I guess, happened. I was that way during the Tet Offensive, and my ship did naval gunfire support. And after 2 years, I transferred to a float staff. And I spent my last almost 4 years in the service on a float staff, first in San Diego, then in Japan. I spent 2.5 years in combat in my 6 years. So, among the interesting things, I guess, if you can call it interesting, is I was on the USS Providence, which was the flagship for the cruiser destroyers in the Tonkin Gulf, and we went into Haiphong Harbor the night they mined it to take out the SAM sites that were right at the entrance to the harbor. And so it was an interesting time. Let's put it that way. And
That's a euphemism that it was a dangerous time, and they were being shelled at the same time they were shelling the SAM sites, that's surface-to-air missile sites.
And just another interesting note. I'm driving a car in this parade. It's a red convertible that was owned by my uncle, who was a Pearl Harbor survivor, and also a coxswain at Normandy. So it wasn't really my style of car, but every time I get in it, I think of him and the sacrifices he made. So I'll probably keep it forever. But I'm grateful for this country, and I'm grateful that military men are finally getting the reception that we didn't get when we came back from Vietnam.
Well, that's very true. It was a hard time. The country was more divided then than it is now. And a lot of folks in the military never received that kind of reception that people do receive now.
Yeah,
and it was.
And I'm glad for that.
And where did you go to school? On your Navy scholarship?
Oh, I hate to say this in Knoxville, but I went to Vanderbilt.
That's what I thought. We won't hold that against you.
But I did get my master's degree at UT, so they let me live here now.
Good. All right. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for your service.
Well, thank you.
We're here now with Harry Truman, President Harry Truman, served in the United States Army, one of our more illustrious presidents. You know, here in Knoxville we have the Truman Day dinner. All over the country they have different Kennedy Days, and they used to have Jackson Day and Jefferson Days, and now all that's gone out of favor. We've always had a Truman Day, and the reason we have a Truman Day, and I think, is because Truman was he told it like it was. He didn't mince words. He said the buck stops here. He said that he served as a artillery officer in World War I and helped the U.S. forces defeat the German forces and win World War I. And so we honor Harry Truman in Knoxville as our patron saint of the Democratic Party in Knoxville. Okay, and also Harry Truman was instrumental he is the one who made a presidential directive, executive directive, to integrate the armed forces of the United States of America. This was a major, major event in race relations for the entire country, and we are grateful for him taking the lead in doing this. Thank you, President Truman.
You hit me. I'm sorry. Yes, he's coming.
Don't worry, I can stab you.
You're the middle.
Now we're here with Bill Larson, who was a Spec 5 security officer in Vietnam.
No, I was in Africa, actually.
In Africa, where?
Ethiopia.
Oh, very
Pagny
good.
Station. Very proud to have been there.
Okay.
2.5 years.
Wow. Well, I actually know Addis Ababa quite well, and I know that was a dangerous assignment at the time.
At the time it was, yes.
Yes. So tell us a little bit about what you did and what all you learned.
Well, with being part of security agency, our obligation was to be part of the Cold War and support the war in Vietnam by spying on the satellites that were flying overhead and getting as much information as we could off of them. I was there for 2.5 years, and we provided support for not only that, but the lunar mission, for the first landing on the moon, and a variety of other tasks. Communications station there was the communications post for the entire Indian Ocean and southern Mediterranean. So we had a lot of very important tasks to perform at Pagny Station.
Well, it was very important, and at that time Ethiopia was really a basket case almost, economically, and they've come a long way.
It was. Haile Selassie would visit our post every 6 months, and we'd have a chance to have a parade with him and review his troops, because our security force for our base was comprised of Ethiopian Army people, and so it was a very good point. But we were in the city of Asmara, which was now in the country of Eritrea, which is where the war was between Ethiopia and the residents of Eritrea, which was then a province of Ethiopia. So it was an interesting assignment, had a lot of good times there, made a lot of good friends, and I think we did work that actually helped to shorten the war.
Good, good. At that time there was a civil war. The civil war with Eritrea and
It
Ethiopia.
had been going on for years.
Right. Well, thank you very much for your
Thank you.
service.
Pleasure
Thank
to
you
be
for being
there.
here.
Great.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're here with Janice Spoon, the queen of the Veterans Day Parade.
Oh, don't know about that.
So, Janice, thank you very much for helping organize the parade. Tell us a little bit about your involvement here.
We just work on making it the like a celebration. So we have 8 cutouts of famous people who were veterans, like President Truman, President Kennedy, John Kelly, John Kerry. And then we have some signs also for some of our own veterans. So, and then we're all dressed with scarves, so we look like we match. And we're in red, white, and blue as much as possible. And all of our cars are have red, white, and blue on them. And we have signs that say Knox County Democrats support veterans.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Well, the Knox County Democrats have long supported veterans.
Yes.
This is not anything.
Hold on 1 second while this guy moves.
Oh, magnets. Oh, somewhere in a box, somewhere in a drawer. Down there somewhere.
All right. Okay, ready.
All right, and Janice, how long have you been involved here?
Well, this is our 4th Veterans Parade, and about 5 years ago, I just said, why can't we be in the Veterans Parade? I don't see why we can't, so I applied, and they said, well, sure you can. So they accepted us, and we've been in it ever since.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for helping with the veterans. Thank you for all the work that you do with the Democratic Party.
It's fun.
You've been great.
It's fun. It's creative, and that's what I like to do that part too. And I would like to say that we do have Al Gore, our famous Tennessean, in the parade, and he was a lieutenant in the Navy.
Yes.
Okay?
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, well, Doug,
We're back.
what a great parade. Knoxville loves a parade,
No.
and especially a Veterans Day parade.
No question about it. Of course, it was a perfect day for weather.
It was.
But man, I was surprised. I was just surprised looking at it. The variety of people who came out for the parade. I mean, we had Girl Scouts. We had fancy cars. I mean, the whole gamut. ROTC,
Motorcycles, everybody.
ROTC
Yes.
units in it.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Well, it was a good parade, and it was honoring the people who need to be honored.
That's right.
These people in World War I, of course, Veterans Day started out as Armistice Day to honor the people who were participated and especially who were killed in World War I. And we've had numerous East Tennesseans were involved in World War I. And the most prominent, of course, was Sergeant Alvin York.
Yep.
And what all he did, won the Medal of Honor, started out as basically a conscientious objector, opposed to killing or opposed to war, and then realized just what it meant, and became the preeminent hero, and really, as you mentioned a moment ago, the face of the World War I doughboys.
Right.
And then we also had right here in Knoxville, Sergeant J.E. Buck Carnes, and you folks might remember that the Buck Carnes Bridge going from the University of Tennessee on the north side of the river to the University of Tennessee and the UT Medical Center on the south side of the river.
Here, the Knoxville Democrat.
There we go. Yeah, there's the Knoxville Democratic Party.
Yep.
And there we are marching.
Yep.
Right. And there's Jimmy Carter, President Carter.
Yeah.
There's President Kennedy.
Yep.
Yeah. But Buck Carnes was a famous Knoxvillian who he overcame a German machine gun position manned by 10 enemy soldiers. The Alcoa Highway Bridge over the Tennessee River is named for Buck Carnes.
Yeah, I crossed that bridge many times, never knew who he was. So,
Right,
yeah.
right.
Thought it was something to do with Carnes High School.
And then of course, we had General Lawrence Tyson, who led part of the offensive that broke the Germans' formidable Hindenburg Line. Tyson's son, Lieutenant McGee Tyson, a Navy airman who died in a plane crash in the final weeks of the war, is the honoree of Knoxville's airport. Mm-hmm. So when you go to McGee Tyson Airport, you want to know why it's called McGee Tyson Airport? It's because of the Tyson family and McGee Tyson, Lieutenant McGee Tyson, who died during World War I. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, we have, there were a bunch of others. The Doughboy statue is there.
Yeah, at the Knoxville High School.
The Knoxville High School, the old Knoxville High School.
Mm-hmm.
And, Veterans Day is always celebrated with a parade on Gay Street. Soldiers and high school bands in the same direction. I'm going to have to give Mr. Neely credit for writing all of this, because
yeah.
I'm just reading it from his column.
Now, is it in that column that he talks about that the parade route follows a route that the recruits followed going off to war?
Going off to war, because they would march down Gay Street. They would march north on Gay Street,
Mm-hmm.
going to the railroad terminals.
Okay, all right.
So, and then they would get in the trains, and back then the train was how you got around, how people got around.
Sure.
That was the transportation of the day.
Right.
And they would march down Gay Street, march to the railroad terminals, and then go off to boot camp.
Right. And so we follow. So the parade itself follows their
route.
Yeah.
Certainly does. And then after World War II, it was called Armistice Day up until the mid-1950s, I think.
54, maybe
54,
56, something like
right.
that. Yeah.
And but in the late 1940s, people started especially the American Legion folks,
Mm-hmm.
started wanting to call it Veterans Day instead of Armistice Day, because so many people had participated, so many more people had participated in World War II. So there was a movement to change it to Veterans Day instead of Armistice Day. Well, there's LaKenya, and who's that young gentleman right there?
Right. Where did they find him?
Right.
Well, anyway, I don't think their voices are live. So, but that was at the end of the day. We were on our way out to have lunch. But
Well, you're looking good there.
So
Looking good.
I'm standing up. Anyway,
You're standing up, right? You're
Yeah.
vertical.
I'm vertical. That's right. Exactly. I talked about the reunion I had with the officers on the ship that I served on.
Yes.
That cap came from that. Other than that, I didn't have really anything left from the Navy that I could identify with. So
Well,
it's been pretty handy.
I've been trying to get a cap from my ship, the USS English. I keep looking it up, trying to order one. But that's why I wore my little ID card.
Okay, right, yeah.
That was my ID card 50 years ago. I enlisted 50 years ago, and I'll tell. I guess I can tell this story. I got drafted 3 or 4 times, and I kept getting student deferments, and so finally I got drafted again, and my dad used his influence. They talk about people having political influence. Well, my dad had a buddy of his that they used to go around, sit around, and have a few libations. And his buddy was a recruiting petty officer at the Navy Reserve. And so my dad used his influence with his drinking buddy to get me into the Navy Reserve.
Well, I've always thought that I grew up in a very small county, a county of a few thousand people, and of course the draft board would then been people I knew, and I became 1A, at 16 or 18,
Right.
but there was a Navy recruiter who came through the town and talked us into taking the test for the Navy ROTC program.
Okay.
And so I took the test for Navy ROTC and passed, or I got a high enough score, so I qualified, I guess is what you do. And then you go through a series of interviews and selected. But it was the same program that Marty talked about.
Right.
And
Marty went to Vanderbilt for their ROTC. Did you?
He
Is
did.
that where you were?
I went to the University of Minnesota.
Oh, okay.
But there were like 52 universities.
Okay.
52
All right.
universities that were
Right. Well,
or
I
ROTC.
wanted very badly to go through Navy ROTC, but they didn't have it, didn't
Here,
offer it here
yeah.
at the University of Tennessee.
So how'd you get your commission?
I did not get commissioned.
Okay.
I was not commissioned. I was a swabby.
Oh, you were? Okay. I
I
thought.
chipped
Oh,
paint.
okay.
I was a paint chipper. I was.
We should say, and here we're back. because
Okay, here we're back.
We're live. this time.
We are. It's kind of live.
Kinda live, yeah.
We're taping this, and it'll be aired on Monday. Excuse me. We're taping it on Monday, and it'll be aired on Friday. I'm Bill Owen, and I'm here with my co-host Doug Viam, and we are honoring our veterans for Veterans Day, and we're kind of chatting up a little bit about how we got involved and how we became veterans. And as I mentioned, my dad had been a petty officer on the USS Randall during World War II. He went through the Battle of Iwo Jima and the Battle of Okinawa both, and so he had seen firsthand just how dangerous and what combat was really like. I think there were 76 ships that were sunk by kamikazes pilots during those battles. And so my dad had seen it firsthand, and he had seen what the Marines did, what they went through in combat, because he was on the troop carrier. So he advised me, and more than advised me, he set it up so that I could join the U.S. Navy Reserve, and I've always been thankful.
How many
for him.
years did you serve then? After
Well,
duty?
I served for, of course, 2 years here going to meetings.
Right.
And then we went to boot camp. Well, I guess we went to boot camp first, and then went to meetings, and then we were being deployed. And just as we were getting ready to be deployed, that was in the, I guess, 71 or 72, the big cutback came.
Right. Yeah.
And so those of us who had not been deployed yet, we were getting ready to be sent to Vietnam.
Right.
We got notice that we were placed on inactive reserve.
Right.
And so I never actually went to Vietnam.
I had a very similar experience. I was there. I'd been there for a year and back, and I was back at the supply car station in Great Lakes, moving on, going on to my next duty station, and got this notice saying, if you want to get out, we'll let you out like tomorrow. And I had resigned, so I knew I was going to be getting out, but I wasn't planning to get out for another year because we'd been extended a year. And then all of a sudden, what you're talking about, they just turned that around. And
Well, we didn't even get the option.
no, well, I had.
They
Yeah,
just,
we-
you were an officer. I guess you got an officer.
I was still. I was regular Navy officer, so that was that gave me some leverage. But the point is that at the end when Vietnam was winding down, man, they just kicked us
Right.
out. One thing I think one of these guys mentioned, we were talking about it, is that this is the 100th anniversary, I believe, of the first celebration.
Yes.
The first celebration was at Buckingham Palace when the king honored the King of France, King of England honored the King of France.
But there was no King of France.
No, there had, whoever he was, the premier or whoever was of France. But that was a night. That was on the night before, and then on the day of, they honored the veterans. Bill, we're going to be back next week with another program. Thanks for listening.
Okay.